This is a BTR News Brief. Derek Chauvin jurors speak. The city votes on future of Minneapolis Police Department. 7 of the 12 jurors who sat on the Derek Chauvin trial are speaking out about some of the behind-the-scenes jury deliberations. On May 25, 2020, on a street in front of a convenience store, George Floyd would be murdered on video by cops in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Multiple videos taken by eyewitnesses were uploaded to the internet and circulated widely, sparking a renewed focus on police violence in the United States. The videos compelled more people to go out into the streets to demand justice for Floyd and demand an end to the brutalization and killing of U.S. citizens by U.S. law enforcement. Derek Chauvin, the now convicted murderer, was the first of 4 officers to go on trial for charges related to Mr. Floyd's killing. Chauvin was facing 3 charges: unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter during his trial back in April of 2021. The 7 jurors appearing on Don Lemon tonight revealed that all jurors were in agreement that Chauvin was guilty on the unintentional murder and second-degree manslaughter charges, but the jurors were split on the third-degree murder charge. After some discussion, there was one moment that shifted jurors' opinions from not guilty to guilty, according to the jurors on Don Lemon's show.
What happened?
I think we did the same thing, a vote right away just to do a temperature check.
Exactly.
And I believe it was either 4 or 5 of us initially that said not guilty or undecided. At some point, I think it was Jody, I'm pretty sure it was Jody, said, wait a minute, does the intended act of harm have to be the death of George Floyd, or can it be him not providing the life support?
I brought up to the fact that this is not what he did, but more or less what he didn't do. He did not provide life-saving measures for George Floyd when he knew that the guy was in pain or needed medical attention.
Minneapolis Police Department has a motto, and if I'm understanding it correctly, their motto is, in our custody, in our care. George Floyd was in their custody. He was never in their care. And that, for me, it just hit hard. I don't feel like they ever cared for him.
Chauvin was sentenced to 22.5 years in prison for his part in the killing of George Floyd. The video of the killing caused empathetic reactions around the world. People in several countries signaled solidarity with the protesters and activists seeking justice for Mr. Floyd. Many who saw the images of Chauvin nonchalantly kneeling on Floyd's neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds while the other 3 officers knelt on his back and legs were disturbed by the behavior of officers showing no empathy as a human being begged for his life, calling out for his dead mother with his final breaths. The murder sparked calls within Minneapolis to reduce the city's number of cops and to reimagine public safety under the lens of public health and not deploying armed officers to answer mental health calls to reduce unnecessary fatalities that impacts the victim, the victim's families, the officers and their families, and the wider community. An initiative was put forth to voters called Ballot Proposal Number 2. The proposal asks voters yes or no on if the city charter should be amended to remove its requirement that the city have a police department with a minimum staffing level. If passed, the amended charter would allow the city officials to reimagine policing with input from the community's elected representatives. This has been a BTR News Brief written and produced by Scotty Reed. BTR News Briefs are sponsored in part by the nonprofit Black Talk Media Project. Make a donation today and help out in funding of the production and distribution of independent news media.